Ladies and gentlemen, Happy New Year. Every single New Year celebration is an opportunity to look within yourself and find something that you can learn, like a new skill or something that you can improve on, like your chess. And then you stick to this routine for the first couple of weeks of January, and then you quit and go back to all your bad habits that you had, the entire previous year. Hopefully, that's not the case. In today's video, I'm going to play some games against my subscribers who have volunteered to play against me. And we are going to look at what it is that you need to gain many hundreds of rating points in chess and to be a strong intermediate early advanced player, which will put you at 95th to 97th percentile. Yes, better than 95% of all chess players that walk the earth. So if you give me a little bit of your time and we learn through some of these games, it will be a great time. It will be very exciting. And we're going to kick things off with kind of the lower bound of our volunteers who have volunteered to play. And that first volunteer is Slim Shaney, if you will, who is 1052. And then after this, we have 1200, we have 1350, and we will be ending this video with 1700. Now, I'm actually not going to play anything crazy. My opponent is a d4 player, so I'm just going to play d5 and see what happens. I predict the London because, well, yes, everybody plays the London. And we're just going to learn some stuff, all right? We're going to have a great time. There's like 1.5 million ways to play against the London. The best way to play against the London is to develop your King's Knight to f6. And then you have to use your D and C pawns together when you play against the London. Now, you could really do whatever you want. I mean, if you don't have to listen to me. But the best way to play against the London is to play like a Queen's Gambit style, because D and C pawns really like to go together. That way you will then put your knight behind your C pawn. And some of you might be wondering, what about pawn takes pawn? It is a free pawn for like a move. But it's very easy to win back. Black will just play e6 and then capture. It's very difficult for white to actually hang on to that pawn. The benefit, and by the way, you don't have to capture. You see, this pawn in the London, which supports the center, gets in the way of that knight. There is no reason to free up all of that for your opponent, so you might as well just keep the pawn exactly where it is. Now, you can develop the knight, you can develop the pawn. Personally, I want to keep the bishop options open, so I'm going to play the move knight to c6. And the other benefit of moving the pawn to c5 is you open up your queen, so the queen can go to b6. Like right now, for example. This is one of the most challenging ways to play against the London, is to put the queen out on b6, which you would not have been able to do had you not played the move, c7 to c5. So one of the ways you're going to have to gain points up the rating ladder is to beat the most annoying and the most solid openings that exist. And the London is very much one of them. Queen c2 is a move. So queen c2 defends the pawn on b2. There's a very common idea here in the London. It's a little bit advanced, so I'm not going to play the exact idea because I feel like no 1000 would know this, but you will now know this. Once you have developed your knights and your queen comes out and attacks this pawn, this queen can actually be deflected with the move bishop to f5. Looks completely nuts. But the point is that if the queen were to take the bishop for free, it would lose control of that. You would take and then trap the rook and win it on the next turn. And this is a very common idea when the queen comes out here, and this queen is the only defender of this pawn. Now, I don't know that, so I want to play this move. And to play this move, I'm going to first play this move g6. g6 is trying to develop my bishop to g7, fianchetto, and develop my other bishop to the square, f5. Now, you will notice I am keeping a tension among the pawns. So I have not taken, they have not taken me. I want my opponent to take on c5 because they will be losing a central pawn. That is one of two central pawns. They will be trading it, and that's something I'm completely okay with. And that's why I haven't taken. And I also haven't taken because I don't want to improve their position. So let's play bishop f5 first, because I think it's a slightly better move than playing bishop to g7. I will finish my development. And now, this is probably what my opponent is going to play, queen to b3. I mean, the alternative is that my opponent plays queen c1, which is a very passive move. Okay, bishop to d3 is another possibility. Now an interesting moment. So if we take, the queen comes here, and we have this kind of interesting situation where we could take this pawn on b2. And I'm going to do it just to kind of like justify our entire play here, right? I mean, this was like obviously the idea. Oh, we're going to trade, and then we're going to, take this. Oh, we're so smart. It's not so clear, okay? And what I mean by that is it looks like it's the right thing to do. But anytime you take on b2, right, which I'm going to do, I mean, like, this is the right thing to do, take a pawn. You have to be aware of the fact that your opponent can actually come down and do the exact same thing right back to you. Now, my opponent hasn't done that. My opponent just castled the king and defended this, but I'm still in a little bit of trouble here. Now, probably the best thing to do when you get in here is to just immediately get out. That's probably the best thing to do right now. Now, if I just continue my development and leave my queen there, what my opponent will do is my opponent will probably play rook to b1 and try to get my queen, right? Try to either trap my queen or win my pawn on b7. But let's just do that. Let's just do that. Let's just play bishop to g7. Oh, what is my opponent doing? Why is it, what? What is queen to b1? That's not a good move at all. Why did my opponent play that so fast? I'm so confused. We'll analyze after the game, but my opponent had to, of course, attack with the rook. Now, this is another free pawn. If I play that move, though, queen takes this is devastating for my position. Horrible. And, improving at this level, you have to be thinking about what your opponent wants too, right? Like, your opponent wants to get in. If I go here, same thing happens. So probably right now with my extra pawn, I should just trade the queens. I hate to do it, right? Because I want to win some material. And when this arrives, I got to go, all right, wait a minute. How do I defend my pawn? In all likelihood, the best way to defend the pawn is just to push it one square. I can also castle long. Looks a little bit dangerous, though. So I think probably just defending my center makes sense. I don't think this is necessarily the best move. Yeah, my opponent is just playing so fast. I don't know why they're playing so quickly. Okay, we have another situation, right? Like, our knight is targeted. We either have to move it, capture, or defend it. I don't think moving out of the way for the sake of moving out of the way is that smart. I'm also not really worried about if I take and my knight is under attack, is that, like, terrifying? No. And I'm up material. So it kind of makes sense. Okay, bishop takes. And now, I mean, I think it's about time we castle. Right? So probably what my opponent should do now is to trade pawns and try to counterattack. Since my opponent is down one pawn, it would make sense for my opponent now to try to win back one pawn. And you also have to think about, like, where it is on the board that you're playing. Okay. Right? So now maybe rook b5 or something would be quite kind of natural, or knight b3 attacking my pawn on c5. Something along these lines. Okay, rook b7, right? So, yes, attacking this pawn here. I can push it. I can defend it. I can ignore the threat, but I don't see why I would do that. I think in the long run, probably pushing the pawn is more beneficial so that the rook never sees it. If I go here, then I haven't really solve my problems. But again, like, another thing we have to worry about now is the clock, right? Like, we're down 3 minutes. We can't be spending this much time against an opponent that's playing super quickly. So now we're going to have to speed things up a little bit. It seems like we've discovered our opponent's playing style is, is speedy, right? So, and we're going to have to speed it up a little bit. Otherwise, we're just going to sit here and get pancaked on the clock. Big moment here. Now my opponent is suddenly slowing down a lot. All right, knight b3. So again, I can push and I can defend. I kind of like pushing. It's not necessarily like the best move, but I have to make a fast decision. Okay, knight c5, sure. I'm thinking maybe to attack the knight, activate some of my pieces. I want to trade, but I don't want to go here, because if I play that move, then I break my pawns apart. It's a very important mini lesson there. That trade would result in me splitting my pawns, and then my pawns are really not, the advantage is not really felt. So I'm going to play rook fc8, and my opponent has a really nice position here. Very active pieces, good compensation, as they call it, for the pawn, for the material that I'm up. But I'm pretty solid as well. I'm pretty good defensively, and I think I will be all right. Probably knight d7. Okay, this is going to trade a couple of pieces. A very important spot here. Oh, and actually a mistake. Now that I'm thinking about it, very tough to see why. So I'm gonna trade. If this, then this. That's easy. Now most people here would just go takes. But I have a move here, which is knight c5, which is an incredible move. Knight c5 attacks the rook and keeps an eye on the bishop. Knight c5 is the best move, and I just want to get these kind of thoughts going in your head. You don't have to snap recapture at all times, but I will, because I'm 1,000. Right? Because most people there would just take the bishop. That's just what they would do. The move knight c5 wins material, and I just wanted to point that out, but you also have to get into the mindset of, you know, of the brain over here. Now, here's a moment. It's a rook endgame. In rook endgames, you have to be able to go for the weaknesses, but you also have to keep an eye on what your opponent wants. Right? So I'm going to bring this rook onto the open file, not the other one, because then I would have lost the pawn. And in these endgames, getting both rooks on the second rank of your opponent is absolute devastation. Just absolutely devastating, right? I mean, this is a very bad move, because it's a very passive move. So rook is very trapped here. You want to go here and push. You also want to make sure your king has some breathing room. I'm going to go rook to b2. I'm going to have to speed it up because I only have 2.5 minutes. Of course, I'm threatening to win this pawn. And if the pawn moves, I will sneak behind and I will win this pawn. And also, you have to think about what is your most advanced pawn in a rook endgame. And for me, it's this one. Right? So if I win that c pawn of my opponent, my c pawn is going to get rolling. And as that endgame creeps into its later stages, my opponent's just not... Okay, I'm now 2 pawns up. I don't know why they didn't defend the pawn. As the game creeps into those later stages, you can part ways with some of these pawns that are very passive and far away. Okay, I said earlier I don't want to do this because I damage my pawns. And it's true, but at the same time, I'm now 3 pawns up. So which pawn do you want to save? Probably the one that has forward mobility, right? So if my opponent wins my c pawn, at least this pawn will make it down to the second rank. Now that pawn is very, very far, right? So now I gotta get my other rook into the game, because probably king f2 is coming. I need to get my second rook into the game. Maybe here, down, and get my rook to the second rank. Okay, very interesting. So if I go down, my opponent will probably go king f2, right? That's going to be the next order of business. And a very interesting spot here. You notice I'm not rushing with my pawn because it's a long race. You got to get as much as you can while, you know, you're in the situation, right? So I'm probably going to lose this pawn. Okay, so maybe I can go for that pawn instead. Or I got to think, what happens in the king and pawn endgame? Who has more pawns? Who has more pawns? I have 5 if this trade happens. My opponent has 4. So what if I just bring my king? Like, let's do the math. I know my time is ticking, so I have to be a little bit faster. We just do the math for a second. If all of the stuff gets traded, all of this gets traded, at the end of the day, I have 5 pawns, and one is a permanent outside pass pawn. So what I have to do now is now it's much better to play the move e5, but let's just say I don't know that. Let's just say I want to bring my king, right? We're both bringing our kings. What's going to happen now is I simply have more pawns. So at some point, I'm going to use my outside pass pawns, not right away, and what I'm going to do, or I can use my center pass pawn. right? I don't have to do anything now. I don't have to rush. What happens now is because I have just simply 2 passed pawns, I will just push one at a time. Right? In a king and pawn endgame, it's very simple. I mean, the person with more pawns and the more dangerous pawns is probably going to win. You just have to make sure your king is in a position where it's active enough, it's preventing your opponent's most nagging pawn from going, right? And so now it's very simple. Just stay patient. I don't need to push this pawn yet. Look, I have 2 of them. I have 2 threats at the same time, and now my opponent is going to have to commit in one direction. So for instance, if I push and he goes there, this pawn is going to sneak away. You cannot stop both pawns. They are too far apart. My opponent goes that way. Now I play e4. Right? You just simply cannot stop 2 pawns. My king doesn't even have to move. It's just whichever direction the white king is going to go, I will then move the other pawn. Very instructive. Most endgames that you just saw, like that rook endgame, will transition into a king and pawn endgame at some point. And what happens is one of the pawns is now a runaway. And now you could try to make a second queen. You could try, like the easiest thing to do is just to pick up all the pawns. And when you have low time, that's what you should do. That way, if you lose on time, notice I didn't take, it was defended. If you lose on time and your opponent has no pawns, at least it's a draw. So what you should do when you have 40 seconds on the clock is you should try to get the last pawn. But if you have a spot now that you can just make a second queen, you should do that. And notice that my king is just stopping the pawn. My opponent resigns. I wouldn't have resigned here. I mean, especially with 39 seconds on the clock. I mean, you definitely should play on here with white. You really never know. But that game was nice because, you know, we got a good position against the London, which is a very, very annoying opening. We played this early queen attack on the b2 square. Here I discussed how, you know, the move bishop to f5 is very much a thing. And if they take, you can play queen b2. And as you see from the computer evaluation, black is doing very well here. There's some kind of absurd variations here for white to try to survive. None of them really work. White can try to, like, trap your queen in the corner, but if you know what you're doing here, it actually, in this version, it does work. You have to, before you take the rook, you have to play c4. The engine likes this move c4, and then you wait for a little bit, and then you take this the rook after you kick the queen out this way. Computer is very, very tricky, but instead of that, I just played normally. And right here again, like this decision was very risky. You know, my opponent could have gotten in, and it would have been a little bit tricky for me to defend the position, especially if something like this happens. And I'm under a lot of pressure here. It's actually not it's not the easiest position to play, you know. But of course, there's also threats on the white king, and it's a very, very tricky position. What really helped in this game was just sort of my opponent played too fast. I mean, queen b1 is a crazy, crazy move. Maybe it was a mouse slip, but, you know. And then I played b6, and the trades were coming in quickly. I defended against a couple of threats. Very important to try to be as solid with your pawns as possible, trying to make sure they all defend each other. And then obviously we had the endgame mini lesson. For the next 2 games, I'm going to be playing with white. So first I'm going to be playing at 1200. For this game, I'm just going to play e4. I'm not going to play anything too aggressive in the opening. My opponent plays e5. So let's play knight f3, knight c6. And there's a lot of openings, obviously. I'm going to play the Scotch. So I'm not playing the 4 knights. I'm not playing the Italian. I'm not playing the Ruy Lopez, the Spanish. I am playing the Scotch opening, which is just a trade in the center of pawns like this, and then after that we will develop our bishops, our knight, castle. This trade is bad for black, but many people do it. Knight f6 is not a bad move. It immediately puts some pressure on white's center. I'm going to play knight c3. It's not the best move, but it is a move. And it defends the center. That is the best move. Bishop to b4 is a very good move. The point is that you are pinning the knight to the king. And now it's a little bit tricky here for white. So the trick is that if I want to go here and I want to defend my pawn, but I can't really do that because then I would be losing my knight. So I'm going to play, like, again, if I move my queen here, I'm going to lose this. Right, so it's not an easy position, honestly. You can try to defend everything with, like, a queen move. So maybe that's the way to go. Maybe queen to d3, just defending everything in my center. So trust me, it's not good. Which is why you got to learn your openings, right? Like, but if you don't know your openings, then you're going to get yourself into some trouble in the early game against a well-prepared opponent. But let's just say you don't exactly know your openings. You just try to follow basic principles and avoid silly mistakes, such as bishop here, hanging your knight. The best move in this position was to trade the knights and then go bishop d3. Okay, so my opponent castles. Well, since I've committed my queen already, I kind of want to commit my bishop too, and then castle queenside. Maybe I'll develop my bishop here or something. Let's play bishop g5. I like this move. Very aggressive pinning move, preventing the pressure here. And next move, I'll play long castles. Now, my opponent has a very nice idea here. If they find this idea, I'm going to be, well, okay. I don't want to trade. I feel like there's no reason to allow my opponent to get this out. But I'm going to keep the pin. And obviously, it's a bad move, right? To weaken your king for no reason like this. That's really not recommended to play g5. So, you know, why would you play g5, right? g5 is not a good move. It's actually the best move. It's the best move because right now, the demands of the position are such that with my king stuck in the center for now, sacrificing your own king safety to unpin yourself is the best move. Why? We'll look at it after, but it's actually the fact that my defense of my pawn is a complete illusion. I do not have a defense here. Because what would have to happen is I would need to put my queen in front of my king, and that would result in this. So the move g5 there was very good. My opponent does this. Okay, that takes a little pressure off the center. Now I'm thinking where to put my queen. Maybe e2? Or e3? I think I like e3. I mean, something could go to g4, but just because a piece can go to a square and attack you doesn't mean it's like some genius move. I mean, you got to think longer than, you know, just, oh, the knight is going to go there. And? Okay, so I'll move my queen. I mean, I could have gone to e2. Sure. But remember, my plan is to go here. Like, this is what I would like to do. And if bishop takes knight, then in many instances, I would love to trade the queen. I mean, I would like to trade back with the queen. If I have to take with my pawn, my king is a little weak over here, so... But it's still a very complicated position. My opponent should be trying to play very fast in the center of the board. Like with a move like d5. Because if you give white a couple of moves here to do what's called consolidate the position, castle queenside, get the king out of the center, yeah, this is a little slow. Right? The idea of this move is probably to build, or it's to get the queen out. But now I'm castling, and now my king is out off the center, and now my rook is in the center, and I feel like I'm sort of figuring out some things now. Yeah, now here's already a mistake. This was my opponent's idea, but they forgot that when I take, the knight is hanging. And every time a trade happens, especially a pawn trade, you've got to be able to see what happens in the position now, right? Like what's changing in the position. I took because, you know, I'm 1200, right? Like a pawn takes pawn, easy move. Is it the best move? I don't know. It might have been better here for me to like play this or this, just preventing anything from going there. Because right now my opponent has what's called an in-between move. Before they play this, they are going to play knight to g4. That's the best move. And attack my queen because they need to get out of danger, and then they will recapture. Here we go. So I could go here, here, here. This is a little bit dicey, I feel like, because maybe there's some stuff here, but this is defended, so it's tough. I mean, ultimately, it comes down to something on the third rank, and it's very difficult to see the difference in all of those moves, if I'm being completely honest. I'm going to go here so I don't block my bishop. Am I convinced it's the best move? Not really. Like, it's very tough to tell. And sometimes it's just better to not spend all your time, you know? Sometimes it's just better not to spend your time. You don't want to spend 2 minutes. It's almost impossible to tell the difference. Okay, bishop takes. So now an important moment. Am I taking with the queen or the pawn? I don't want to open my king. However, does taking with the queen do any damage to my position? No, because that's defended, so why damage your structure, right? It's better to keep your pawns kind of side by side than stacked and opening up your position. And on the very next turn, what I would love to do is kick out the knight. Just get the knight back to where it was. And now we start kind of transitioning to that middle game phase of, okay, kings are on opposite sides, which means always one of the ideas is going to be just a massive pawn wave to break open the structure. Whoa. Knight takes d5. We missed that, right? What is happening here? So the idea is that our queen is hanging. Their queen is hanging. If we take this, they're going to take this. And then our rook is hanging too. Oh my. Is that good for us, or should we try to move our queen? But if we move our queen, we have to make sure the bishop stays defended too. And the only way to do that is to play something like queen here? Wow. Right? Is that a good move, bad move? I don't know. Wow. It's crazy. Now, I see what the best move is. But I'm trying to think also like a 1200. And I'm trying to think what would a 1200 play? And it's not so easy to come up with a good move here, I have to say. Let's see if my opponent sees what's so good about the move queen g3 for black. Black can actually play g5 now again, and that would be trapping my bishop. Does my opponent see that? And then I want to see how they play trying to convert a winning position. They're going to get a winning position probably. They're going to be up a bishop, which is a substantial advantage. However, are they going to convert it correctly? Which would be to try to, and they do play it. Wow, they do play the move g5. So, I don't want to lose the bishop in a way that I help my opponent get all their pieces into the game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my knight back. I'm going to say, all right, you're going to get my bishop. How do you defend a worse position with white, right? This is a very important skill. And it's not to trade queens. Do not trade queens. You need to keep your most important and impactful pieces in the game, right? So what does that mean? That means your queen should really stay on the board. What my opponent should do here is either check me or try to play a move like queen f6 and queen f4. Trading queens here would be a massive benefit to black, because it would really relinquish any of my opportunities to defend myself, right? So queen g5 check is played. I'm going to play king to b1. And now queen f4 is a very good move, because what it also does is it strips away the defense of this. So check and queen f4 is, I don't know. Okay, rook e8. That move doesn't have, it's not a bad move. Now I have to keep in mind, if I like just kick out the knight, queen trade is coming, right? So What I'm going to do, since I'm losing, is I'm going to try to make sure every move creates some sort of threat or maybe inconvenience for my opponent. I'm going to develop my bishop, target the knight, and then maybe target this. Also, when you are losing, the clock is a piece. I have 438, opponent has 410, right? I'm not going to sit here and sulk. I'm going to sit here and go, oh my god, I can't believe I blundered, I'm so bad, right? I'm going to try to play a little bit faster. This continues to be a good move. And there's a lot of good moves. I mean, there's like some knight c3 check ideas in the future to open up my position. It's a very bad position for me. Very bad position. And this move is a problem, actually. I mean, if my opponent finds this move, I am in serious trouble. And they can't hear me, so I'm recording this in my room. Okay, they play queen g6. They didn't find queen f4. They weren't thinking to trade. Now, I kind of want to line up an attack on their queen again, right? So I'm just posing them problems, and notice that the time is now 1 minute advantage for me, which is important because my opponent will run out of time if they keep playing like this. Bishop f5 is already a mistake. And what I have going for me here is this kind of target of the G file. If this, I could possibly have this fork, which actually could result in a pretty big loss of material for black. My opponent might need to go to g7. And it just goes to show you, I mean, chess is hard. Now they're down to 1.5 minutes, and they're thinking, and they should have simplified. That's what they should have done. They should have looked for a queen trade, right? They didn't do that. And I'm just keeping pace, right? This is the way you convert a winning position for black, and this is the way you defend a losing position for white. Okay, queen g7 on the board. Gotta look over here. Any threats? No. Quick move by me. Another quick move. 7 seconds. Just attacking the knight. Building my time advantage. Remember, the lower they get on time, the much higher chance that they're going to make a crazy mistake. There's nothing to think about, by the way. This is the only move. Now, queen trade? No. Do not. No. Absolutely no queen trade. No queen trade. We need the queen on the board. We're setting up our opponent for failure. Queen here, rook g1, boom, we win the queen. Remember, this is another possibility, g4, g5. We discussed this when the position was more equal and more balanced, right? Okay, any threat to that move? No. g4 looking very nice. Of course, it's a very double-edged sword we're playing here. Opponent's time is ticking down to 2 minutes now. Every second that goes by, right? Now, I could also sit back and do nothing. I can just move my rooks back and forth. Knight f4 is a great move. Great move. All right, targeting this. I could try to run away, but if I run away, then the rooks are going to get traded. So I think I'm just going to go g5. I mean, again, I'm not convinced this is the way to go, but I'm trying. You know, I'm trying, and my opponent's down to 150. And this is under attack. And this is under attack. And if this, then the G file is opening up, which might be good for me. Now, do not trade with the queen. You got it. Of course, knight takes. Just opening up the position, opening up our opponent's king. If knight takes, I think I'm going to take with the pawn. I don't want to trade more pieces than necessary. Rook takes is probably not a good decision, because that trades the rooks as well. And the less pieces that I have, the far less chances of me surviving. But notice that I'm now up 2.5 minutes, right? Knight g6. Now, do I take? I don't think so, because rook takes rook. Keeping pieces on the board. Any threats? How about this move? This is a little bit of a step in a different direction. But now I'm suddenly creating threats over here. That's going to get my opponent really distracted. He's going to go, oh my god, I don't want to lose more pawns. If I win that pawn, I'm going to win all the other pawns, and suddenly I'm not even worse. Look at this. They're thinking, right? Down to 1:10 on the clock. I nearly have 3 times the... I do have 3 times the amount of time now. Down to 1 minute. And this all happens because you start playing a little faster. Now, what is that attack? Okay, so I shouldn't take the pawn. But this is what I wanted anyway. Now my rook is on the same file as all those juicy pieces. Suddenly, I probably even have attacking chances, right? Now I am looking at moves like this. I'm looking at moves like this. What do? Do I keep harassing the pawns, or do I try to... Let's go on the H file, right? The G file, the H file. Now we're attacking. If this suddenly... Oh my goodness. Position is just turning around completely. 50 seconds. There's no way. I mean, black just can't win this position with 40 seconds on the clock. We won this game because we haven't won this game yet, but we will win this game because even though we blundered, like we had a tactical oversight in the middle game, we started speeding up and we started playing a bit more kind of conservative, but in a smart way. All right. Now, what happens if I play the move again? Like the momentum is shifting in the game, and I see that this is under attack, and I go here. This is a winning move for black. Bishop takes a2 check. The knight is hanging. Oh, they missed it because they weren't looking for checks. Bishop takes a2. Did not have to defend that. Rook takes d4, right? Rook takes d4 was going to win my queen on the next move. Crazy. Oh my goodness. King is... All right, now I'm going to slide back. I don't want to give my opponent two opportunities. But again, time is ticking. At the end of the day, we are going to win this because we put a lot of pressure and played a lot of good and quick and solid moves. Now, it's kind of like that moment in the game. Like, dude, how do I not do something stupid here? What if I just play a3? Just kind of a pass-back move. Just pass-back move. Okay, queen takes f2. Fine. But now, hello, right? You took my pawns, but that opened up the files from my rooks. You don't always want to take pawns where your king is on the same file. And now suddenly in comes the counterattack. And ultimately, this was decided because my opponent got a little bit too dangerously low on time, and this is simply game over. Now black is just actually losing. It's not even a question of you know, time or anything like that. It's straight up a losing position. There's a couple of ways to win. A nice way here is to see that knight f7 check, and then queen g7. But there's something even fancier. This is rook h1. And if bishop takes h1, knight f7 was checkmate. We go here. Black loses because if bishop takes, I either have this mate or queen h7. Now, this game was a very bad example of how to play the Scotch. I did not get a good position from the opening. As you can see, black was much better, and absolutely the position here demanded this move g5. It is the top computer move. Knight e5 is a decent move, for sure. G5 is the best move. And, you know, my opponent actually was doing a decent job for a while. You know, they actually played pretty decently. Like this move c6 was, I thought, a bit slow, but, you know, then my opponent played d5 and found this move. And then here, you know, this idea, bishop c3 and then knight takes d5 was really impressive. Very impressive idea. G5 here, amazing move to trap my bishop. And I think from here, you know, they just sort of lost their way a little bit. Like definitely queen f4 was the way. But instead of that, you know, my opponent played a little bit hesitant, spent a little bit too much time, and still had an advantage like through and through. They were just playing very slowly. You know, I just sort of stalled the clock for a while, and then by the time like the position got somewhere they could try to convert it, they had a minute on the clock. Just sort of slowed down and tensed up when they got like a very, very good position. And that allowed me to, you know, to make a comeback. But this was a total kind of push and pull between attacking, defending, converting a winning position, and also trying to defend one. And I think we both kind of demonstrated a nice job there of how to use the clock, how to stall out the pressure a little bit, and not just lose. This person has me as their profile photo. I played e4 last game. I guess I'll play d4 this game. I'll play a Queen's Gambit. I won't play a London. We already saw a London. I'll play d4, knight f6, c4. And I will play like normal. Just 2 knights. And then I guess I'll decide what I'll do. I can play g3 and bishop g2 like Catalan style. I can also take a full center here with the move e4. Which one should we go for? I'll play g3. Fianchetto, Catalan-style game. My opponent is playing a King's Indian defense. So, castles. And now it's time for chess. Okay, knight to c6. So I can already attack the knight, but this is kind of normal stuff. I'd love to play e3. This is a move I really want to play. But to play that move, I gotta do something about this bishop. I'm going to put my bishop out to g5 just to have it there. And then I want to play e3 to create a very strong, rock-solid pawn structure. And what I want to do to complement this bishop is to expand on the queen side. So I want to play like rook or bishop or something. And then I want to, expand. So the bishop can stay here. I guess I could take, but there's really no rush. I don't need to take. So I'm going to play, I guess I'll play e3 now that the bishop has sort of departed outside of the pawn chain. And maybe on the next move, I'll play the move h3. Maybe I should have played h3 right away. I probably should have. At this level, these sort of queen's pawn positions are very, very tricky and convoluted, and all the pieces sort of tangle together. I've been waiting for this move, so I'm going to trade now, which was always kind of my idea. And now, I mean, maybe I should just do the same to my opponent. I should just ask, like, what are your bishops? Maybe they're going to copy me, because I feel like even at beginner and intermediate level, these sort of things happen all the time where people just copy each other. They're like, oh, he took my bishop, so I'm going to take his bishop. But we'll see. We'll see what my opponent does. Of course, if they go here, I just trap the bishop. If they go here, I fork. Okay, they take... bishop or queen are probably okay. I think I'm gonna do this. And if I have to, I will always just back up. The reason for this is because I actually think my queen is better suited over here. But, I mean, it's very tough to make that decision. You know what I mean? Just when you take with the bishop, you need to realize that's a weakness. And if you lose that, that's extremely embarrassing. So just make sure that you don't lose your pawn. Like, it's your responsibility now to go and defend yourself. Now, whose bishop is better? Mine. Why? My bishop has an open diagonal for the most part. This bishop is staring into a pawn that's extremely well protected. So when I move this knight out of the way, I can take the pawn. What? King f8 is such a strange move. What the heck is king to f8? Oh my gosh. Yeah, I want to play b4. I've been wanting to play this move for a while, so I can either play a3 or rook b1. It's very, very tough to tell the difference between those two moves. So there is b4. Now, when I play b4, my knight no longer has any defense. And so I need to be a little careful. Now, do I want to play a4 or go b5 right away? Very tough to tell the difference between those two. I think it's probably much more human to just launch yet another pawn, right? It just feels nice. Just launch all your pawns forward and just go bully that side of the board. And my opponent cannot really fight back because the knight is like this. So I'm just expanding, right? This is like very normal. If you're ever going to play a queen's gambit position with a bishop on g2, you want to always be able to expand on the queen side with rook b1, b4, a4, because your light squared bishop is a beast. And okay, knight goes back to a7. I don't think anything's really stopping me from playing the move b5, so it seems like a good decision, right? I'm gonna play b5 now. That restricts the knight from coming back into the game. Now, here's a $1 million question. If my opponent takes on b5, what do I do? Right? What do I do? Do I... Oh, okay. Well, we will not have to answer that question. Now it's, again, very, very tough situation. I have a bunch of... Everything is locked, right? Do I go here? Like, what am I trying to do? Do I go here? Do I try to trade my knight for the bishop? Maybe, but if I do that, then my opponent just goes back. So, I mean, I don't really see any benefit. This is one of those positions where you just try to improve. I mean, even a move like queen up 2 squares is an improvement because I'm defending my center, I'm defending my knight, b6 for black is kind of an improvement. Now the question is, I mean, how do I make progress here, you know? What's next? I mean, maybe I play h4, h5, right? Like, maybe this is an idea. Maybe I bring my rooks to the center. Maybe I play e4. I don't like the move e4 for two reasons. Number one, I block my bishop. Number two, I block my queen. And I guess number three is like, I even weaken my center a little bit. I don't know what to play here. I mean, I could bring my king up a little bit. I don't know. Tough position. Where do I want to break through? I guess I'll just improve my king a little bit. Just bring my king up one square. Very tough position. Very tough position for the intermediate level. Probably my rooks need to come to the center. But you could also make an argument for creating an attack with the flank pawn here. Like, imagine the queen got in over here, right? This is the way you have to think about chess. Imagine the queen infiltrated the black position on h7. So right now, white is much better because of piece quality. Because this knight is just atrocious, and I have a lot more space. Now, that is a great move. And now things get a little bit more complicated. Do I take? I actually don't think so. I like the fact that I have the better control of the center of the board. So maybe I just bolster my center. Maybe I just do nothing. Just improve my center. Bring the rooks to the center. At some point, I'm going to have to try to get in with my pieces. Like, at some point. I don't know when. And if this trade occurs, fine. But then the pressure is off my center. And my pawn is defended. Bishop back. So could the idea be to be going like this? Now, maybe we try to inch forward a little bit here. Try to poke a hole here with h5. Try to sneak my queen into the black position, right? Because again, my pieces are of a higher quality, and the bishops are not of the same color, which means if I target an attack, the bishop is not going to be able to defend. Wow, f5 played. So very, very limited caring for the king safety. However, the move e4 now is a problem. So what do? Do I take? Does that improve my chances? Not really, because take's in here. Right? I think I have to move one of the pieces. In anticipation. Do I move the bishop or the queen? Personally, I like this move. Why? Because my opponent has a bunch of pawns on dark squares, which means my light squared bishop is like a lighthouse. I mean, it sees everything, right? It's going to be impossible to get rid of my bishop on that square. Of course, I expected e4. Now, here, it's borderline impossible to tell the difference of any of these moves. So let's just go back here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to try to break apart this structure. So I think a very important move here is f3. My opponent's pawn initiative was a bit short-lived. I think they sort of thought that the pawns would live forever, but now that I have this f3 move, I'm asking a very unpleasant question of the position. Now, my opponent played this to go here, to try to get rid of my bishop. I went here to try to get rid of their blockade. The problem is that when they go here, I'm going to take. That's what my space advantage contributes to. When I take, black is in serious trouble because the king really should have been here. And the king is not there. That's a problem. That is a problem. Anyway, hope y'all are good. Hope you are enjoying the episode. Now I can even take with the queen. And the queen actually stops the move c6 completely. What does this do? This attacks this, right? But what happens if I use my weakness as an asset? Right? Now I'm knocking on the door here. Not to mention, I could play h5 still. Removing the defense of this pawn from that. And yeah, this is bad. This is a bad situation for my opponent. Very, very dangerous. And notice how my opponent locked their own horse out of the game. They saw my initiative coming and they sort of disrespected their horsey. Right? So this is an example. This game is an example of a few different things. First of all, it's kind of maximizing your piece play from the opening that you are playing. Taking space, converting a better position, and closed position play. I think there was a lot of closed position elements here, as both sides for most of the game had 8 pawns, or 7. So an example of how to take space, control your opponent's pieces with the pawns, and so on and so forth. Now, I could just crash through here. That's probably the best way to do things. But if, I could have been patient too. I could be patient. For instance, if pawn takes, queen takes is winning. But in chess, you don't always have to play the obvious move. And this is actually a very nice idea by my opponent, trying to block my attack with my own pawn. Not a bad idea. I'm going to take, just out of kind of inertia. Most people, I think, would just take the pawn, forcing a response out of black. If queen takes, then I just march forward. So pawn takes. And now we need to just get rid of the blockade. There's a few ways to do that. Number one is just to bring the knight, right? Like the queen is just under attack now. So maybe black will sacrifice the rook for the knight, but like as a defensive measure. But it's already dire times, and they do. That's what they do. Queen takes. Now this is probably a good move, trying to fight back. Otherwise, I'm just going to march right in. And now white has a decision. I mean, I could block. That's definitely the best move, is to block and try to apply pressure. But, let's just say we just move the queen. Okay, it's not necessarily the best move, but let's just say we move the queen. And as we try to convert the position here, we have 2 ways of converting the position with white. Number 1, very simple. Trade rooks, trade queens. Trade rooks, trade queens. Completely winning endgame. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to trade the rooks, trade the queens. Just get all the pieces off the board. The second way is to try to, get in and checkmate. And my opponent actually is declining a trade. So while my bishop is a target, I now have still this removal move, this rook e6. And once we get that deep into the territory, it's very bad. The position is very, very hopeless. And in fact, here I have a very beautiful tactic, which I think I'm going to play just out of the beauty of the game of chess. Whenever you have a disconnect like this, of course, if you're just watching this, you should trade the queens. Trade the queens, or at least, take this and just mate. I have this unbelievable move, f6, which disconnects the bishop and the queen. However, it hangs my queen. However, in that position, I have pawn takes knight, double check. Double check. So that's a threat, and that's a threat, which means my opponent has to move the king. When my opponent moves the king here, which is the only legal move, I will move my rook, opening up a discovered attack on that king and covering the h-file. So I will move my rook to h6. And then it's basically going to be made on the next move, as the queen has to block. I have to play this for the beauty of the game. I have to sacrifice my queen, double check, and mate. But if you're just playing this game, trade the queens, march your pawn forward, win the endgame very easily. But of course, I'm sorry, I have to. Sometimes a beautiful move must be played. And hopefully my opponent sees the free queen. If not, I will be very sad. But we'll see. Now keep in mind, this only works if you take the knight. If you take the bishop, this doesn't work. But now it's double check. So you cannot take or go here or here, right? You have to play king g8. You cannot block. And now preventing the escape. This is absolutely amazing. Rook to h6. And it's mate. Just amazing. Amazing little tactical trick at the end. Don't worry if you cannot see such things yet. F6 is the top engine move. It's an amazing little idea. But again, you do this and suddenly you are completely lost. So be very careful. The alternative is this, F6. You know, if knight d5, you take with the pawn, or you do this, and this is the way you win. You just send it down into an endgame, your rook swerves around, you take all of black's pawns, you bring in your king, and you win. Black has basically nothing here. This was a very interesting game. You know, it was this kind of idea to bring the bishop out and bolster the center, and I think my opponent here should not have taken. I think taking was a mistake. I think they should have tried to keep 2 bishops on the board, because this is just a clearly better position for white. And then I think I don't know what on earth king f8 was. I don't know. That was not a good move. Should have definitely played e5 and tried to play in the center. Once this got going and I got my initiative going here, I just sort of overwhelmed the black position. And then knight a7 was a bit of an overreaction. I mean, you cannot do such things to your own pieces. The knight is just completely in jail. And I mean, just sort of like effortless improving moves here, you know, queen to d3, you know, king to g2. Probably should have brought my rooks to the center, probably should have played h4 a little bit faster. And here was another instructive moment not to overreact, not to take, to just keep the tension. And my opponent here playing f5, you know, it was another moment, like we had to anticipate the incoming threat, we didn't overreact. I really like the concept of putting this beacon bishop on d5, and then very nice idea here by white to just crack things open with f3. So I think this was a pretty instructive game in terms of handling a closed position, removing a blockade with knight to e4, and then just sort of simple converting. Of course, it ended with a brilliancy, but okay, I mean, this is the way you win games at the 1350 level, and it's like smooth. I mean, it's a smooth game, and I'm giving my opponents chances, you know? For a final bonus game, I'm actually going to play a 1750. So if you had the patience to watch an hour, e4 is played. Now, I'm going to play a Caro-Kann because this is my favorite opening. And I recommend Caro-Kann for everybody. So if you like, okay, advance variation by my opponent. What I recommend against e5 is to play c5, immediately undermining the center. My opponent might even have my course, which would be kind of hilarious. And here I recommend 2 options. I mean, knight c6 to target that. And e6 to just immediately get this. I'm going to see how good my opponent is in terms of their preparation. Okay, I'm playing a course owner. I'm playing somebody who has the Gotham course, which is actually kind of terrifying. Which means I'm probably going to get a losing position, actually, if they're very well prepared. F4 is a very rare move, but it's, you know, it's me using my own courses kind of against myself. What I like to do here is I like to fight on the light squares. So it's a very natural move here to play bishop f5, but we want to pin the knight when it gets to f3. So the best waiting move here is actually knight to h6. Knight to h6. There's also e6. And now it's sort of like up to white. Like, how is white going to develop? Okay, white plays a3, trying to play this move b4. That's white's idea. Of course, very logical move. Now, part of me wants to play a5 to prevent that. Part of me just wants to, you know, play bishop g4, which is sort of what I'm supposed to play anyway. Let's think. And there's another idea to play f6 to try to, like, break apart white's center before white is able to fully develop their pieces. Which one should we do? I'm also trying to think at like the 1700 level, what looks the most natural. Just falling into a bad position in the opening is okay. Like getting into your opponent's preparation and so on. Let's play this move a5. We don't exactly remember what we're supposed to play, but we're at least playing logical moves against what our opponents want. Our opponent wants b4, so we play a5, right? Simple. Then we will decide what happens here. We'll decide where the bishop goes. We'll decide when we play e6. The reason a5 is not a great move is because the move bishop b5 now pins you and makes it kind of hard for you to develop. I've wanted to play this move. I'm very happy to play this move now. Then I will very happily play e6 as well, because my bishop will not be blocked, right? And now it seems like we're sort of making some progress, like typical opening progress, right? Like now I'm attacking the pawn. And I will try to win it back on the next move. But we just sort of played logical chess. Like we developed our pieces in the way that we thought that we were supposed to. Of course, bishop e3 should be played. And I'm not rushing. I'm not rushing to take this. I haven't been attacked. Nobody's attacked me, so I'm not rushing. If bishop e3, I will also play knight f5. This is another justification of my knight being on h6. I will attack the bishop, which is a free tempo for me. And slowly, I will try to win back my pawn. Of course, I don't need to think about this move. It improves the position of my knight. It targets the bishop. However, a good Caro-Kann player knows that their time here is limited. Meaning, if white starts to kick you out, you will really lose the game fast, because this is all you have. So, an important moment, okay, understanding like piece dynamics and piece play and all this stuff in chess. In this position, I would probably like to win one of my pawns back soon. Oh, I would also like to crack my neck. How do I do that? Can I do that? Like, how do I do that? On the other hand, I can just play bishop e7, castle, and just wait and see. But the longer that I wait and see, you know, the faster white is going to finish development, castle, kick me out, make me trade, kick me out again. So it's a tough spot here. I mean, like, let's say I'm like, I want to play f6, but do I want to open my king, right? Like, am I trying to open my king before I'm even castled? Is that okay? Is it acceptable? I don't know. And you start looking at the position, you go, oh, it actually is completely fine, because let's say I play f6. So what is my idea? My idea is that I want to take and take. I'm just immediately winning my pawn back. I take the knight, I take the pawn. If you take me, I bring my queen to the party. That's definitely an improvement for me in the position, 100%, right? Like, I mean, I have an active queen. Okay, this is an interesting move by my opponent, because I don't think, excuse me, I don't think they quite realized that I wanted to take the pawn in the center, right? Pawn takes e5. Gross, should blow my nose. I muted the microphone so you wouldn't have to hear that. So I think my opponent just completely forgot the pawn on e5 was hanging, which is really not good. It's not a good thing to forget about. Only reason I'm hesitating though, like a little bit concerned the center could come under fire. Like, do I have to take? And at this level, this is the type of stuff you have to think about. Do you take this completely free pawn? I'm actually not so sure. If you do, you have a massive responsibility to defend your position. Do you open up such unpleasantries to yourself before you are fully developed? This is crazy. I actually don't think so. I actually think I want the pawn to stay there for a little bit. I am not ready to take that pawn. This is the type of stuff that you have to do when you're 1700. You have to avoid taking free pawns because you are not in a position to actually weaken your position so much. I'm going to wait and take the pawn at the right moment. And now we have to think about the fact that white actually has two hanging ducks just sitting there. Sitting ducks, not hanging ducks. Just waiting to be captured. Right? Like, I'm threatening both those pawns basically whenever I want. And as we compare the quality of the pieces in the position, it's another interesting question. This knight, right, can wander in and plant itself on d6. That looks tremendously unpleasant, I have to say. But why did my opponent not defend e5, right? Another thing we have to think about. This bishop is terrible, right? The light-squared bishop of white bites directly into our central pawn. White's knight likely has the best future. Our pieces are actually all pretty good. And the dark squares here are a little bit loose, so a move like bishop h4 is always a very curious move. Like, what happens if both dark squared bishops were traded? Now, okay, at this point, I don't understand why I wouldn't be taking this pawn. And yet, I still don't think it's the best move. I think probably I can still stay patient. But okay, I mean, at this point, why not win the pawn back? It's basically the entire justification of the Caro-Kann. Also, removing control of that square makes this impossible, right? So, seems like everything is okay. Seems like everything is okay. I think my opponent should have probably played rook 2e1. Oh, this is a bad move. At this level, you need to begin sensing things. Retreating like this, and I would say this like 9 times out of 10, retreating is not going to be the best move. Now I can pounce. First of all, I see a target. I want to go attack it. Idea number 1. Idea number 2, shove my pawn forward, continue to try to march forward. Also looks good. Idea number 3, trade off the dark squared bishop. If I trade the dark squared bishop, a bunch of real estate opens up. I actually really like this idea. Bishop h4. Rook c8 and queen c7 probably were also very good. But I think the dark squares in the white position are open for business. Like queen h4, knight e3, knight g3. This knight can rotate around as well. And my center block just sort of like repels these two pieces completely. They cannot do anything. And I think retreating was just a step in the wrong direction for white. Now, of course, you could have also attacked this. And the only reason I'm not jumping out of my chair to play the move d4 is you have a massive responsibility, again, every time you make a move like d4 to understand I'm changing the position in a huge way. In a huge way. So, am I weakening my structure? I'm not 100% sure. Okay, bishop b5. I have absolutely no idea what that move does. So I can take. But we've been discussing this throughout the video. Like, just because you can doesn't mean you have to. Why don't I just bring my queen over here, right? Just sort of bringing my pieces to the side of the board, adding pressure. Just slow and steady, positional improvement. Just proving things, making the position a little bit better. So on. Now the time situation is evened up. We are bringing now 5 pieces to the king side. I actually predict the game will probably be over before move 25. Like, it will be completely lost for white. I think the way we are going to utilize this position for ourselves is we are going to create a big attack. I think these knights, I think the queen, I think these all these pieces are just simply going to overwhelm the white position. I don't think my opponent is going to be able to deal with the incoming assault. I just don't think, like, anytime you want to launch a successful attack, you need to have 2 more attacking pieces than they have defenders. And right now we have 4 attacking pieces. You can hardly argue that there is a defender in the white position. I want to play knight f3 check. Of course, pawn cannot take. King will go to the corner. But I want to have a queen ready to go for checkmate. So why don't we do that? I'm not rushing to take because I don't want white to control the file. So queen to g3. And the threat is knight to f3 and queen h2 mate. And I have absolutely no idea how white can possibly stop this. I guess white can play king h1. Preemptively. But I feel like we have something there too. Maybe not. Maybe I'm overvaluing the position. Yeah, maybe king h1 is just the best move. And then they live to fight another day. I don't know. Could very well be the case. Position is not as over as I anticipated. And I mean, again, in a position like this, you need to win. You need to not sacrifice something for no reason. I am setting up a threat, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's 100% guaranteed. King h1 played. Now, if I replaced my queen with a knight, that would be really splendid. I can't do that exactly. So now a question, what if I rotate my knight to f5, for example? To try to move my queen out of the way, and then... Another option here is to play rook to f5. Try to trade on my own terms. And it's very tough to tell the difference, and with 3 minutes on the clock and time ticking, I mean, you just kind of have to do something. I got to be very careful moving this knight, because it's never too late to blunder a check, a pawn with a check, and then lose a couple more pieces. So I am going to play this move knight f5. I'm monitoring all of these pieces to see if at any point they can do anything to me. I don't see that they can do anything to me, so I'm not worried. But once they start coming back, it's a totally different story. They absolutely can start doing things. You can start trading, and all of a sudden, like, I don't have enough attacking pieces, and I gotta be careful. I mean, gotta be careful. It's never over. There we go. Wow. Nice find. So I don't think I want this exchange. If I take, there's also this check. Yeah, my idea was to move out of the way and then land my knight in, but now it's probably not going to be possible. Oh boy. Okay. Maybe knight to d4. Queen is defending my knight. Queen h5 is a big threat, but it's a very light threat to parry. I can even take at that point. It's a very tense position. I mean, I have a big advantage, but there's nothing that wins outright. And there's some annoying moves my opponent can start playing here, like queen to e1, like trying to trade queens, and suddenly, I don't even know. I mean, I can't even tell if I'm winning in that position. I'm certainly doing very well, but I don't know if I'm winning anymore. And I don't really want to trade queens. I would probably back up. And it's okay to back up, to not trade queens in a position like this. So I'm winning, but it's the opponent's doing a good job here, trying to defend themselves. Yeah, queen h5. I anticipated this. Big threat. You always look for checks and captures and attacks. I don't really want to do that. I could trade. Like, now would be a good moment to probably take, because now queen takes pawn is not possible anymore. But I think it's far more human here to play a move like pawn to g6. Attacking the queen, forcing it to skedaddle, and then still trying to, like, find some sort of checkmate. Like, I feel like human beings are just very... They can be very tunnel vision-y. I want to give a mate. I don't want to... And I think I see one, kind of, but it's very sophisticated. Whoa. Knight e2! Counterattacking my queen. Incredible. Wow. I have a very interesting idea here. I'm not going to play it because I feel like no human would see that with a little time. I'm just going to move my queen. If I had taken the knight, my opponent's idea was to come back. I had a very interesting idea there. I'll show you after the game. Very, very tactical. Ah, oh no. They hung their queen. That was a big mistake. This is under attack. Trade rooks. I'm gonna trade bishops, and then this is a threat. Take the pawn, and this is easy. So, when my opponent played knight to e2, I could have played a very interesting idea. I could have played, well, actually queen e3 was the best move. Oh, never mind. I thought I could have done this. I thought I could have played queen takes d3, which is called a desperado. The point is that I'm going to lose my queen anyway. And so I thought take, but then this. And it's actually not so clear. I had calculated very briefly, I calculated this, and if this, then this. Very tricky stuff. And there was like, there was some idea there, but it was actually pretty good defense, I would say, overall, by my opponent. Yeah, it wasn't so bad. From the opening, I thought white had a very pleasant position. And then I think here my opponent just went a little bit crazy. Now, again, I was deciding between f6 and bishop e7. I think f6 actually might have been... Yeah, the computer thinks I'm a complete idiot. The computer thinks that if I'm going to do anything here, I should play a4 and try to win this pawn back by putting something on a5. Which is, yeah, that's very sophisticated. But here I was doing all right. Yes, I should have just focused more on the center. I decided to break. And now an important question. Should I have taken? No. Yeah, computer thinks this is too dangerous for black. It likes the way I played it. And then here, finally, I'm taking and I have an advantage. And yeah, it's minus 0.2. But look at what happens after this move. -1. And immediately, this little reroute by white cost white 4 points of evaluation. So, yeah, just kind of misunderstanding the position. I thought bishop h4 was a very instructive move. Trying to secure dark squared equity. And it's the best move, according to the computer. So, bishop h4, I think, is very, very nice. Bishop b5 was played in the game, but... You know, even if my opponent had played this, I would have gone here. I would have been threatening some knight e3 stuff. And then, you know, d4 comes next. And knight d3 comes next, or knight g3 comes next. And black just has a crushing position. So, I hope that was a fun episode. I think a lot of these games, you know, like to summarize, if you've made it 80 minutes into this thing, sometimes it's good to have opening knowledge. But in basically every one of these games, I sort of was trying to emulate whatever, that I'm on my own in the opening, that I'm no longer playing from memory, and I'm just sort of trying to anticipate what my opponents want at all times. I'm trying to show you how to balance between winning and losing positions, how to play the clock, and I think a lot of these different elements combined will contribute to your long-term improvement. So, if you manage to catch this in the beginning of 2023, set some New Year goals, stick to them. And in about a week or two, I will be launching my Middle Games Masterclass with a lot of different examples and a lot of different concepts that people struggle with. So do check that out on Chessly. There will be a free sample chapter. If you're watching this like in the middle of 2023, it's definitely out. So definitely make sure to check it out. It's got a lot of the stuff that we covered in this video in those games and in that course. And I think it's really a nice roadmap on how to get better at the middle game as a beginner, as an intermediate. So, and if not, you don't want that one. There's a lot of different other courses that we have. So yeah, happy chessing, and I'll see you in the next video. Get out of here.